Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. From Sarnia to Ottawa and from Toronto to Sudbury, I want to thank everyone for attending today's NGCOA Ontario Chapter's webinar. Many of you have joined us over the past couple weeks for our previous Ontario Chapter webinars. We hope you found them interesting and informative. Today's webinar will be quite a different format though. This is going to be more of an informal discussion led by a few of our colleagues who managed to stay open through the COVID-19 pandemic in British Columbia, or recently opened up in the past 2 weeks in Alberta. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sean Hunter. I'm the Regional Director of Southwestern Ontario and the moderator for today's webinar. As well, I want to introduce my fellow Ontario Regional Directors, Greg Chambers in Eastern Ontario and Blair Breen in Central Ontario, who will both be joining us on screen throughout the webinar. Before we start, I'd like to provide a quick update on the advocacy efforts over the past 2 months. Ontario's We Are Golf Partners, which includes all 5 golf industry associations in the province, including the NGCOA Canada, Golf Ontario, PGA Ontario, CSCM Ontario, and OGSA, have been working very hard in the background on the advocacy efforts with the Ontario government, specifically with Premier Ford and the 13 MPPs on the Ontario Jobs and Recovery Committee, as well as with the Office of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. This includes multiple conversations we've had, numerous letters and documents highlighting golf industry's best practices, as well as showcasing the significant economic impact that the golf industry has in the province. As well, many of our chapter advisory board members from the 3 Ontario chapters, along with key NGCOA Ontario chapter members, have also been actively advocating select members of the Ontario government in an effort to get your golf course open. I want to thank all of you for all your effort and time during this difficult, stressful time. The feedback that we've received from the MPPs has been very positive, and all indications are that the message is coming through loud and clear. But unfortunately, we are all now in a waiting game. That being said, we are anticipating some updates and hopefully some very good news from Queen's Park later today. Before we start, I just wanted to remind everyone on this Zoom call that it is illegal for associations collectively to discuss anything specifically related to setting your prices. The Competition Act doesn't allow businesses to collude in any sort of price strategies, and trade associations, such as the NGCOA, are very big targets because of our role in bringing competitors together in so many different ways. We can talk in general terms today, like spring rates, summer rates, full rack rates, but let's keep the conversation general with respect to pricing. Thank you. So let's take a moment to go over today's agenda. As you see, we'll have a few key speakers on today's webinar, all of whom I've worked with over the last few years, as they've provided insightful articles which we've highlighted in our Golf Business Canada magazine, including Doug Hawley, the owner, operator, and managing director of Redwoods Golf Course in Langley, BC, which is a public facility. Slade King, the COO of Play Golf Calgary, which is a multi-course operation, including the Links of Glen Eagles, Blue Devil Golf Club, Little Devil Golf Course, Heather Glen Golf Course, and Serenity Golf Club, as well as Scott Kolb, the general manager of the beautiful and private Victoria Golf Club. Now, I'd like to take a moment to thank each of the GolfMax Platinum partners who've made this webinar possible for us today. We would not be able to hold these webinars that we've done over the last 3 weeks without the support of the Platinum sponsors. So I want to take a moment to specifically thank them, including Clubcar, Integra Procurement Services, Moneris, Moosehead Breweries, Tion Software, and the Toro Company. Now a few housekeeping items to discuss as well before we get started. Please note today's webinar is going to be recorded. Up on the screen right now you see my colleagues. There's Greg and there's Mark. How Zoom is going to work specifically for today. Everyone's microphones are currently muted. All of your cameras are turned off and must stay turned off during the entire webinar. Please do not turn them on during the question and answer portion. At the top right-hand corner, you can set it up on gallery view so that you can see all the speakers at once, or if you prefer, you can do speaker view, but then you're only going to have one person on the screen at a time. I personally recommend gallery view for today's webinar. Regarding questions, down at the bottom, you see we've received many questions in advance, and we've shared them with today's speakers, but we're looking to get questions directly from you during the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can use the chat function at the bottom of the screen. You see the circle highlighted. Please note that you'll not be able to see everyone's questions, but we will be reviewing them during the presentation and then asking them on your behalf as time permits. So without further ado, let's get into the discussion. We're going to start with Doug Hawley. Doug is the managing director, as I mentioned, of Redwoods Golf Course in Langley, BC. Redwoods is a very busy public golf course, which normally hosts numerous tournaments, weddings, and events throughout the year. Great to see you again, Doug. Thanks for joining us. All right, all yours, Doug. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say I'm glad you guys are getting organized. I'm glad you're getting open. It's nice to see you do have an advantage over us out west as we had to work our way through this. So I'm just going to give everyone a quick rundown of kind of happened. Redwoods is, like you said, a public golf course. We do about 60 weddings a year. It's a family-run, family-built operation. Most of our revenue comes within a 6-month window. So 94% of our revenue happens in that 5 to 6 months in the summer. So we're not unlike the golf courses back east. Yeah, we're open year round, but there's not a lot of demand here in our off season. As we were carrying on in March, we're just getting started. Courses are working out their aeration schedule. The COVID-19 are starting kind of out west. Washington State's getting hit pretty hard. All of a sudden, things are changing daily out here. And it was not going too bad. And then all of a sudden, Golf Canada and the Provincial Association here wrote a letter to the government saying golf courses should be closed. So all of a sudden, a bunch of golf courses closed up shop, which completely changed the demand scenario. So we went from, doing 60, 70 golfers a day to peak demand, completely full all the time. At the same time, we're trying to work through the COVID-19 standards that are coming down that haven't been written yet. So we're kind of writing them as we go. So we did things like we split our teams up into, our crews up into teams, Team A, Team B, Team C. No two teams would work together. We were working on signage. At that time, it kind of was pretty hectic. Phone demands were, you couldn't answer phones fast enough, and I'm pretty sure Slade can contest to this. You had to move to online bookings. We had actually shut down our online bookings and went to phone service because we couldn't offer long-term projections anymore because it was a day-by-day scenario. So we reduced from 1-year booking down to 3 days by phones. That wasn't working, so we had to go back to the online system. At the same time, we're still trying to work out what is safe, what's not safe, receiving lots of hate mail. Lots of media was coming around. There was kind of a pack of 7 golf courses in this area. And I think about that time, there was a full 19 to 20 courses open in the entire North America. So this pack of 7 golf courses, we started a media sharing. So we started an online group, and we were just sharing stuff constantly, hour by hour almost, and then started sharing all our data. That's when the NGCOA kind of got in and was pretty busy. Keep in mind, the regional director here looks after 2 provinces, BC and Alberta. So luckily, Alberta wasn't that active at that time because they were still in an off season, so she could focus a little more on BC. A lot of the time was spent dealing with courses that had closed, upset board of directors, upset members, upset golfers. So between that and trying to get some regulations, and as governments close down things, they don't take golf courses in consideration. So they made a blanket policy, and at that time, it was no more than 50 people on site, on any given site. So we were battling this. You could only have 50 people on a 175-acre scenario. So once we kind of got through all that, got open, got going, got the momentum back to the golfers, we went ahead and said, okay, this is our chance. Demand is so high to really take control. Let's take our tee sheets back. Let's take control. Let's hold the golfers accountable. So then we started implementing policies, charging credit card on file, foursomes only up until 1:30. Just really making the golfer accountable for his tee time, just like a hockey game. You booked it, you're paying for it, into discussion. Luckily, we were one of the few games in town, so we could really, really abuse the golfers, is the way to put it. We weren't nice. We put them through the ringer. They loved it. They accepted it. It was kind of funny. It's like, wow, you spent 25 years being nice and all this stuff too. Don't answer the phone. Turn the phones off. We can't handle it. We're getting 5,000 to 7,000 phone calls a day. sorry, sir, that's the way it is. Take it or leave it. So we've, you know, it was so hectic. We've now, everything is balanced out. The media's gone away. The negativity's gone away. We've left in the procedures of this being accountable for your tea time, and it's gone over amazing. So we now, for us, the biggest thing out of this, I would recommend to any course, if you're thinking about doing something, now is the time to do it. We experimented last year with foursomes only in the mornings. On weekends, we've now made it mandatory foursomes only bookings up until 1:30 every day. And it's, golfers are accepting of it. The other big issue is golfers want information. Getting information out and consistent information is difficult. The NGCOA bulletins that came out on a regular basis to all the golf courses started helping us all get information out consistent to the golfers. And that wasn't enough. We had to start producing videos. We had to show golfers what it was like. Tell them wasn't enough. And just to give you an idea of our stats, just to tell you how much demand there was, just in April, and this is April, we picked up 3,400 new people in our database. Our website typically sees 6,000 to 9,000 visits. It was 51,000 visits in April. And then we used an app. We actually use the Gallus app here for bookings. In April, 7,800 times people went from the Gallus app to the booking page. So there was that much demand here. So once we realized it was there, it's the opportunity to really hold golfers accountable. And that's my message today. And I think Slade will probably contest the same thing. It's amazing on how adaptable the golfers are and how appreciative they are. Out of it's come a few things here in the lower mainland of Vancouver area. One is golf cart rentals are way down. They're about 25% of normal, and that with single riders. Concession services are way down. The confidence isn't there yet for the golfers to start buying food and purchases on site in this particular area. We haven't really seen yet. I'm just going to leave it at that. Just for those that don't know, I do use the Club Profit system. And that's where our online bookings are going through. We're also using the Moneris Vault as well, and then the Gallus app. So that's how we're managing the demand for golf here.
Wonderful. Thanks, Doug. A couple quick questions for you. Right now, I mean, you're an events place, you're a tournament place, you're a wedding place. Obviously, things have changed dramatically. Can you just talk about that for a couple minutes about how you initially reacted to it, and then more so how you're going to handle things in the next 4 weeks, 12 weeks, because we're dealing with that here in Ontario, where right now tournaments are, you know, June's our tournament month and September's our tournament month. Well, everybody can't go to September because it's already filled up, right? So how are you dealing with it? And maybe just share some of your situation.
Sure. So when so we started out as a pretty small clubhouse doing operations, and it was such a competitive market here. I said, I don't want to compete with daily fee golfers. I'm going to get out of the daily fee game. I'm going to focus on tournaments and weddings. So we've done that. So we do about 60 weddings, 63 weddings a year, 45 shotguns through the summer. So my main business is tournaments, shotguns, smaller type tournaments. That's my specialty. So my business plan is now extremely flawed. It won't work for this. We're now having to adapt. We will be doing tournaments. We are coming up with some suggestions to our tournaments, how we're going to do them. The weddings we've changed to 3 types of weddings. We now have a, well, I just want to back up. Just so you know, we don't refund any wedding deposits. So every bride that had booked had a choice. She could either rebook for next year, she could cancel, and our deposit was $2,500 and we'd give her $500 back, or she could do a virtual wedding or a smaller type wedding. So we called it the intimate wedding package. So we're doing weddings for up to 20 people right now. There's no ceremony, there's just a ceremony, no reception. It's more like a Zoom wedding. Come on in, a few people. We'll maintain social distancing. They'll have a drink, a toast afterwards, and they're gone. So we've set that up to do three of those every day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's kind of how we've moved from that moving forward. We are expecting word today or tomorrow, just like you guys, on opening food services, because food service has been closed. They've given us some hints where it's going to be. Our guideline is going to be up to 50 people, still social distancing being in place. So we had already designed a wedding package for ceremony reception for 50 people. We focused on buffets. Buffets will no longer be allowed, so we'll be table service. So we'll be moving forward with smaller type weddings for the remainder of the year.
Right on. Thanks, Doug. That was great. So I appreciate you sharing that experience with you. Now, I know there's a few questions that people are sending in right now, but what I'm going to do is hold off, Doug, and we're going to switch over to get to the other presenters as well, and then we'll come back to questions afterwards, okay? So just a reminder for everybody, as I said earlier on, down at the bottom, there's a chat feature. You can use that to send in your questions, and my colleagues Blair and Greg are going to be taking those questions, and they're going to be sharing them with them. So what I'd like to do now is shift gears here, and I'm going to introduce Slade King. Many of you know Slade from his efforts during the Canadian Idea Sessions at the annual Golf Business Canada Conference and Trade Show. Slade's quite famous for those sessions. He's the CEO of Calgary, Play Golf Calgary, which includes a mix of high-end to mid-range public golf courses, including, as I mentioned, the Links of Glen Eagles, Blue Devil Golf Club, Little Devil Golf Course, Heather Glen Golf Course, and Serenity Golf Club. So great to see you again, Slade. Thanks for joining us, buddy. Over to you.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, we had a bit of a different path, and I don't know if you're looking for historical, but I'll just start where Doug did as well. We in Alberta, we were more like Ontario, where we were non-essential and essential, and kind of drew a line in the sand. Obviously, golf would consider non-essential. Again, with the comments from certain people at Golf Canada, kind of kicked us in the butt a little bit as far as NAGA Alberta, and we had a really good working relationship with Alberta Golf, PGA, ourselves, and the AGSA, and the CSCM as well. So NAGA Alberta worked together from those comments on day one saying we better start to do something. So we actually hired a PR communications company that we'd worked with on a different project, and that's how we kind of attacked things as far as getting the best practices together. That was somewhat stamped from our NAGA Alberta level, and then going to the government and just educating them on what BC's doing. So thanks to Doug, and also what they're doing in the US, and then taking our document and saying, golf can be played in a safe way, physical distancing, we're organized industry, we're ready to do this, much of what everyone in Ontario's been going through at the same time. So kind of during that, we had no real communication or feedback. We didn't think we were going to get any good news. Alberta's numbers were not great. We had some outbreaks, we had some setbacks that way, so we weren't really expecting any news. And then on May, I guess it would have been April 30th, we were kind of expecting a phase 1 relaunch similar to Saskatchewan's, with maybe a May 14th as best case scenario, crossing our fingers and hoping. And then our premier said golf is open this weekend, so that was a Thursday, and then we could open Saturday. Much of, I'm sure, what you guys are all anticipating this afternoon. So yeah, feverishly getting our booking pages working, getting prepayment working, testing. The second it left Premier Kenny's lips, our phones exploded, much like Doug's saying, they haven't stopped for 2 weeks straight. So if I say anything, have staff for the phones, because your phones will explode, and like Doug's saying, you might not even be able to answer them all, but every phone call takes 10 times as long. They ask a million questions, a million different scenarios. What if my mother-in-law has had back surgery and this and that? So anyways, the phones take a long time. We had the technology set up in advance, so we were very lucky. We kind of obviously anticipated, like what much of you guys are doing. Like Doug, we're Club Profit. We are Gallus Golf for the app, and with Club Profit, we have their CPS Air products set up with iPads and wireless credit card machines, and we're taking 100% prepayment, foursomes only, for the first weekend, as we didn't want to join anybody up together, which worked well. After about 3 days of that, a lot of complaints and pushback. Members especially, you have a couple that have played together for years and just randomly joined other people. So after 3 days of that, 4 days of that, maybe we kept foursomes only online. We allowed twosomes to call in, and that way we could talk to them and say, okay, you're going to be joining someone, just so you know. And then these are the protocols and procedures of that. So we did that, and then after about 8 days or so, we opened up twosomes booking online, and we haven't had a problem with that since. So yeah, we were very lucky. They called us current phase, which was great. We hope that all our work with NGCOA and NAGA kind of got us into current phase instead of phase one. Phase one, and our clubhouses were closed, so we were doing everything outside. So kiosks, we just parked the beverage cart, outside of the clubhouse and just put tables around it to keep the physical distancing between the customer. Same with the pro shop station with a tent outside. And then waiting for phase one, which was retail and restaurants. Phase one actually launched today. So we're not opening the restaurant today. I didn't really want to touch that. There's a lot of confusion on what we're allowed and not allowed to do. So I thought we'd wait this weekend. We moved inside today, this morning. Stickers on the floor, plexiglass divider at the counters, sanitization or hand sanitizer stations, all that kind of stuff. But we're just doing grab and go kiosk and no hot food in the lounge. So that's where we're at, and maybe that can be something you guys can anticipate as far as your rollout. Just be ready outside, have tents, have heaters, that kind of stuff. Alberta had different protocols than Saskatchewan and BC. We weren't allowed to bring anyone in 15 minutes before, so we had to have someone monitor at the gate, which was critical, key to the whole thing. So just think of your staffing that way. So they stopped people at the gate, checked their tea time, told them. We actually started to turn them away and made them come back later, but we ended up allowing them to pull over and park on the driveway, and then when it was their time, we gave them a wave and then they could pull down into the parking lot. But if you can manage the gate, you can manage the whole process, because all you're going to have around the clubhouse area is the group on the tee, the next group up, and that's it. You have 8 people walking around. It's very easy to manage and keep your distancing. So our technology helped us do that with iPads and checking people in outside and kind of space and things. So we took maybe a different method, because we had so much room than maybe a Costco or a grocery store. We didn't aisle people up and queue them up. We tried to take barriers down and let people spread out, because the thing is just keep your 2 meters. So just you could stand wherever, but just kind of give them lots of room and take some barriers down. That seems to work for us, because we just have everybody's in a different situation, and you have to figure out what works for you. So signage, lots of signage. So we also had the Gallus app. We put all our COVID procedures on the app, and when we checked you at the gate, we told them download the app and read our COVID procedures. So our downloads went through the roof. So we'll use that for some marketing at a later time. But that's how we kind of manage that. And then just signage from where to park, where to walk to, what to expect on the golf course, no rakes, don't touch the flags, all that kind of stuff. And I anticipate being eyeballed really hard. Our opening weekend, we were under the gun. We had a lot of press and a lot of media that was favorable, and there was a lot of people, like Doug had mentioned, that feel we shouldn't have been open. So we had health inspector every day, pretty much. I think we were up to about, between our 4 courses, I think we've had about 9 inspections by now. We had bylaw officers parked outside our gate. We had them parked between where you have to cross the road at one of our golf courses. They were parked there. If 2 golfers were riding in the same cart, they were pulling you over and checking your driver's licenses to make sure you had the same resident. We were doing that prior as part of our protocol, so we didn't have any tickets, but that's the point we're getting to. And then also just a lot of peeping Toms, a lot of people sitting there with binoculars from the roadway. I had a detailed note coming back from our health inspector of a complaint that basically logged our entire day. 11:07, 2 golfers standing too close. 11:23, a golfer sat on a bench that had a sign that said don't sit on it. 11:47, 2 golfers in a cart, didn't look like family members. So luckily we had a really good relationship with our health inspector. So if they do come to your property, just, obviously it's confusing for them as well. They don't know what to do. So just simply, you tell me and we'll work through this together, but you will have some inspectors take things to the letter of the law. Other inspectors taking interpretations that other regions are not. 4 of our golf courses are in 3 different regions, and all 3 health inspectors have a different interpretation. So some are super harsh, some are like, I'm not worried about that. Some said use this to sanitize, so we bought a bunch of it, use it at the other golf course. The other inspector said, no, you can't use that to sanitize, you have to use this. So just expect that kind of stuff. So even when you're sharing amongst yourselves, it could be different by inspector. So we had those issues to deal with. But like Doug's saying, the demand is incredible. People want to get outside. We have people that have never played golf now playing golf. We have people who haven't played in years. We have people who play 5 rounds. They've played 5 rounds already in 8 days. So the demand is incredible. So just, you know, manage accordingly. And staffing levels, you can't really have too many staff. We kind of went into it thinking, man, this is going to be a rough year. Let's go lean. Let's not have a lot of staff. And all of a sudden this demand, it's just like, my God, we could have a banner year. We could have a best year ever if we keep going the way we're going, even without tournaments and whatnot. So we're in the same boat for tournaments. We don't know where our mass gatherings are 15 right now. So obviously no really events at all to speak of. All our weddings are on hold, or we've pushed them to the fall, or rebooked them for next year. So we're trying to come up with a package now where we can get tournaments to come, box lunch, play golf. We'll mail you your prizes, go home. So we're just trying to see if there's any demand for that. But yeah, that's where we're at, and I'll love to get any questions.
That's great, Slade. One thing I was wondering, how are you handling the washrooms? That seems to be a question that I'm getting a lot of, is should I open up my washrooms in the clubhouse? Should I close them? Should I only have on site? And how often do I clean them? And should I have sanitizer and signage? Do you mind just talking about that for a minute?
Yeah, no problem. We didn't know what washrooms were going to be. Saskatchewan's different. I'm not sure where BC is, but we wrote our NAGA protocols. We had 39 protocols for NAGA. The government only came out with 19. So they actually took our documents, said, great work, but it's a little too much, which is shocking, right? So we didn't have any tea time interval restrictions, which is fantastic. So if anything good comes from this, hopefully Ontario doesn't have any tea time restrictions. I'm sure you're all crossing your fingers. But washrooms, we were anticipating only being allowed to let 1 person in at a time and sanitizing between every use. That's what we were anticipating, the worst, right? So we were going to have a staff member stand there all day. When the protocols came out, the only restriction was clean and sanitize regularly. That was it. So we were outside full setup other than bathrooms. We had the 1 door open, and then we kind of walled off all the hallways from the bathroom, so you can only go in the bathroom in and out. They did make a restriction that on-course porta potties had to be closed unless you had a foot activated hand washing station. So anticipate that. So our on-course were closed for the first 4 or 5 days until we could get these foot-activated sinks delivered from our supplier. And of course, everyone has shortages and all that kind of stuff. But we had that going now, so we were able to get on-course going about 4 or 5 days later.
Perfect. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. So what we'll do is we'll hold off on questions for a couple minutes, Slade. I just want to turn it over to Scott first and kind of go through that angle. So what we'll do now is welcome Scott to the conversation. As I mentioned, Scott is the general manager of a beautiful private club, Victoria Golf Club. And I think he's going to have maybe a little different conversation with regards to how they handled it and what the expectations were from their members. So Scott, I'll give the mic to you.
Yeah, definitely a perspective from the members club. And the good part from us is we know who's in the doors and who's in the gates, and we can control it. We're 3 weeks in and we still haven't allowed a guest on site yet because our demand has been triple what we expected when we came out of the gates. Because what we had was we started off with 12-minute intervals only between 8 and 5. And all of a sudden, quickly, people realized there isn't enough tee times. We actually did threesomes to start. And so we had 41 tee times, 120 spots, which, you know, at our golf club, usually 200 rounds is a good day. But all of a sudden people are panicking. We're the only game in town. They can't do other activities. There's no other sporting activities. you know, at least in our province, we've been encouraged to continue to exercise. And I think that's what helped us out of the gate. I know Slade and Doug have both mentioned the media presence. I think we really worked hard on making sure we had a proactive approach before that. You know, we were getting ready for any social media. We did that video, and really the video was for the members, but really it was, we knew it would get leaked and get to other places. So we wanted to make sure we were setting ourselves up for it. And that was our sort of concept of getting everything ready. If I had anything to change now that I've done it as a private club and the demand and everything else, I know public courses can't do this probably, but I would do 9-hole rounds to get people through, get them out. They've all been cooped up for so long. You could potentially charge, if you were an 18-hole golf course, you could charge 9 holes and charge at a time. But if I had said anything for a private club, do your first week, get that bent up demand out, because they have nothing else. They've got flexible schedules right now. They're working from home, whatever it is. You know, your normal intake of what it's like in the spring will triple your expectations. So just be prepared for that. I also would say go to foursomes, do 10 minutes most. Everything was overkill in our sense. We did 12 minutes and threesomes, and within a week we were foursomes and 10 minutes. So if I have any words of advice, I would say the 12 minutes is overkill. I saw something about 20 minutes in Manitoba or something. I just started laughing at that. It's just not reality. I mean, if you got 4 people in the group and they've got to go through, you know, it just doesn't make sense. But I do have a superintendent and head pro that are very cautious. I wouldn't say they've had to come out of their bunker to get to work, but they were definitely making sure safety, which is great for me to have. Nice to have that approach. But our steps are, when they come in from the golf course, they have to wait in their cars till 20 to 25 minutes before the tee time. Then they can go to the putting green, check in, and because everything's outside. There's nothing inside right now other than grab and go food, which we've had set up for months now. But they check in, then they go to the range, then they go to the first tee. Everything's at a 10-minute slot. And that way we've created so you don't have two-way traffic. Everything's one-way traffic as you go through. And then when we're done, we actually have a different routing how they normally would go back to the clubhouse, and get to the car and go. And the one thing you're going to have is you're going to have, and I'm sure Slade and Doug have had this, there's a lot of times people like playing groups of 8s and 12s and 16s, you know, they like them, they come in for drinks and everything else. And our first little bit before we closed down, we had issues with guys deciding to have tailgate parties, and you know, they had beer in their car and they wanted to hang around. So that was one thing. When we reopened, we were ready. Okay, first, we're not going to put those groups together so that they don't have those back-to-back groups, so they're not tempted to hang out at the clubhouse. So and as Slade mentioned about staffing, we've had staff, you got, you know, instead of having one back shop, one pro shop, and you can survive, we've now got one in the parking lot, one in the check-in, one in the pro shop answering those millions of phone calls, one just roving. And in our case, we've got lockers and club storage, and that's a challenge too, because we don't want them in the building. And so we've given them their clubs, and then they go. They don't come back in. And with lockers, we've had to have a staff member that says, okay, what do you need out of your locker? And they're basically a runner. They go get it. And we try to make sure that they only do that once and get a big garbage bag and get whatever they want. But, you know, different situations. Not all of you would have clubhouses with lockers, but that's, you know, so our staffing had to really increase. And because of safety, and I think Doug mentioned at the start, we had Team A and Team B, and we did the exact same thing on the grounds team as well, is we've got two different teams, so that if, you know, our thoughts were at the start was we were worried about one person going down would kill the entire club. We're finding that's less and less of a concern, but then again, we're only having, I think we had 16 cases in BC and 7 yesterday, and I think our island has only 1 person in the hospital right now. So, you know, we're in a different boat than you guys are probably in Ontario from what the cases I've seen. So there's less of that fear factor from our point of view, but that's how we set it up. So our pros right now, for example, work 3 11-hour days and then 1 half day. So on Wednesdays, one group does the mornings, one group does the afternoons, and then they basically work the other 3 days through. And because we haven't started up lessons until this week, that hasn't been a bad thing. Our pros usually work only 30 hours a week, and then they can teach the rest of the time. And I know Ontario's a little bit different that way, but that's our plan. The good news from us, I guess I would say, if there's any silver lining from this, I'm a pro first and I'm a club manager, is I've never seen our associations. We always think in BC, we're all pretty tight knit, that our pros get along really well. GMs get along really well, but we really, because we're on an island, we're a smaller group, but I've never seen a collection like this. We're connecting every day for the club managers, and the head pros are, connecting as groups. They've all got WhatsApp. I'm on a Links grounds crew one that's a WhatsApp. And it's really great to see everybody collaborating like never before. And if anything, Doug mentioned the Golf Canada issue. It was a huge issue with us, but it actually helped galvanize us because we had something to bitch about together. And then, okay, well, now we need to get ready and get going. And we did it as a group and got forward. So I hope that helps. From us, when we talk, Slade mentioned signage. When you first drive in, we've got a billboard. And then in our case, we decided, okay, our members need carts. Some of them are old, some are young. So we've got a parking lot. In our parking lot, we've taken up an area of clean carts, dirty carts. Members go through and they pick up their clean cart. And when they're at the end of the day, they put it in there. It's almost like a shopping cart idea. And again, we have to now staff to clean the pull carts, lock them up and leave them out there. But those are the kind of steps we've made to make it all work. But it's on the opposite end. Our pro shop, poorly designed, is on the other side of the building. So it's caused us to actually require more staff than less.
So talking about staffing, how are your staff actually, one of the questions I'm getting, how are they actually cleaning the carts, the power carts and the pull carts? Are they in full gear? Are they face masks? Are they shield, power washer? Are they sanitizing? There's literally so many questions going on right now. That's one of the ones that I thought I'll throw it out to you, Scott. How are you guys handling that?
Yeah, I mean, I am maybe a little less cautious about these kind of things, but the staff, they've got their gloves. We've got gloves. If they want to wear masks, they can. Masks actually haven't been that promoted out here, so we haven't had to worry about that too much. But we let them sort of sit for an hour before we go in there. Then we'll clean them. But we've got a power hose. We've got the cleaning, antibacterial cleaning supplies. The power carts are a bit more of an issue for us because there's so many more touch points. So we really said it has to be a medical cart. And again, I know public courses can't pull this off, but we said we'll sacrifice the revenue if we do this because there's so many touch points and so many places they have to clean it. It's a pain. So we've said medical carts, single rider only. And because we've got a road that divides our course, it's very public. We said, if you're caught helping somebody by driving them up a hole or pulling their carts, you're going to get suspended. And sure enough, we've had to suspend 6 members already. Wow.
So is that for the season or is that just for the next couple weeks?
Just a period of time. Oddly enough, 2 or 3 of them were past board members. So it was kind of our president had to suspend another past president. And he said, has that ever happened before? I said, not in my time, but and I think you have to have that knowledge. I mean, actually, our president lost it on these 3 young guys, and instead of telling the president to go apologize for crossing the line, I said it's probably good for you to have that reputation for the next little while, just to make sure they're in line. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's perfect. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. So I think what we'll do now is we'll open it up for questions. I know Blair and Greg, you guys have got a bunch of questions that have come through on the chat feature right now. So I'll turn it over to you guys and fire away. And maybe if it's a specific one to Scott, Slade, or Doug, let them know. Otherwise, let's throw out the questions and then guys, take your turns answering them. And we'll try to get through as many questions as possible over the next 20 minutes or so. I know there's a lot of questions to go through. So Blair, I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, perfect. First question that we have is, do you have all your policies and procedures posted on site for all of the golfers to read before they play?
Who are you asking, Blair?
That anyone can answer that question. Slade, you have the most golf courses. Why don't you answer that question?
Yeah, we have a central point where we just thought we'd use our app, and that seems to work the best. So we post our full procedures on the app. We have all the procedures on the terms and conditions that you have to check off when you book your tee time and prepay online. We have all our procedures on your reply email for your confirmation of your tee time. And then when you're on site, we have, same as Scott was saying, we have a billboard with the procedures on it. We did paperless, so we're not handing out brochures. I've heard other golf courses do that, kind of opens up a whole can of worms when you start talking about handing things out. So we just kind of kept it central with the app, and then do a lot of the pre-stuff with the booking engine.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that is that we talked about waivers, and Nanaimo and Gorge Vale had these waivers, and they made them either sign it electronically or do it head on. And our board said, you know what, they're not worth anything at the end of the day in reality. So we just created a protocols and expectations before they started on the first tee. And we had some hard copies in the first tee, but we realized you're not going to get everybody to sign it. You're not going to sit there and check and see if they've read this or that. So you do your best and make sure you've got all the signage up. But to have, you know, a full-on waiver, I think is not going to be the reality of being able to get every single person before they tee off and read it and sign off on it.
And just to add quick, because I know, you know, we have some tech and stuff that people maybe not have. So if you don't have an app, I was talking to another owner about it. It's like, put your policies on your website, create a QR code, point it to that website, print that QR code on a huge poster, put it at your gate, show up, scan, get your policy. So there's ways around it that everybody can do, and you can go old school or you can go high tech, but it's just information, right? So.
Absolutely. Thank you. I have a question here for Doug. You mentioned earlier you do a lot of weddings and that you're not having refunds for your weddings and doing a smaller thing. How about, you mentioned a lot of tournaments as well. What are you doing for the tournaments? Are there refunds? Are you moving towards, you know, golf passes per se? Doug, I think you're on mute.
There you go, Doug.
Okay, there you go.
Did you get that question, Doug?
I did. Tournaments are, just having some video challenges here real quick. Tournaments are a little different. We didn't take deposits for most of our tournaments as they're returning year after year. So a lot of them just moved till later in the year to see what's going to come out of it. We are going to do some type of tournaments. We're not sure what it's going to look like. A lot of them will move to regular start. We're looking at phasing in 50 at a time. So we'll do 50. And while those 50 are eating, we'll be starting the other 50, doing events like that. But a lot of them are fundraisers, so they still want to carry on.
I'd say we gave them 3 options. You can rebook for later in the season, you can rebook for next year, or you can take the value of your deposit in passes. So you can bring out clients anytime throughout the summer. So that seemed to help. It made 80% of the people happy. And then we have about 20% that said, I don't care. My company said I can't hold an event no matter what. I want my money back. So, and we still kind of working through some of those requests.
And Scott, what about at your club? With it being a private club, have you had any tournaments that you've redirected, member tournaments or member guests or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, we've canceled pretty much everything through till at least August 12th, because we don't have very many outside events, but when we do, we have this one 3.5-4 day event, and that one we're still hanging on hope, but reality is everything that we've been told is that events over 50 aren't going to happen anytime soon. And again, everything's happened really fast. So I've been trying to hold off anybody making any rash decisions to cancel it at this stage. But when, you know, we've lost obviously any of the spring events, anything going forward. But and all of our weddings did get pushed back into last year. But unlike Doug, we did refund. A lot of ours are member related, so not worth the PR to lose that. So.
There, another question?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few here. Given the fact that you're doing little food and beverage, how are you dealing with some of the golfers bringing their own alcohol onto the golf course? Did you have to hire more marshals to supervise the golfers here?
Let's hear from everybody, because I think you're all going to have different perspectives with
Right.
your clientele. Let's start up with Slade.
Sure. You know, for us, it's big picture. We needed to get open, and we said, let's focus on what we can do and don't focus on what we're not allowed to do. So big picture, we have golfers out, they're paying full price and they're all in foursomes, and we have full tee sheets and no tee time restrictions, and we're doing quite well. So we're not managing people bringing their own liquor right now, to be honest with you. AGLC and all those guys have so many other things they need to worry about that you know, we feel they're not cracking down, and, you know, not, if we see something, we'll deal with it, but we're not actively investigating things right now. You got to pick your battles, you know, especially when you, like, what's your what can you manage day one, you know, weekend one, and then, okay, now let's work on things next week, and then let's work on things the week after. So it's a whole new world, and sanitizing and gloves and masks and staff calling in sick with symptoms, and, you know, you're gonna have a lot on your plate. If a guy sneaks a 6-pack of beer out there, I could really, it's at the bottom of my list right now, to be honest with you. So but Doug's farther along into it, so he's probably, he maybe has layered in some different policies.
What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, when we first started, we weren't, no one was really worried about that. It was still pretty cool in the year too, but now we've all pretty well clamped down. We've had to run extra marshals into the parking lot, as that was a real challenge, especially if you're near a community that is closed. When there was only a few of us open, people were driving long distance and setting up in the parking lot. So definitely count on having extra staff in the parking lot. And you need to use phrases like, while you're on the property, this is what we require. They're all pretty accommodating. You know, they'll put their lawn chairs away and take their beers and go. But we're definitely 100% enforcement. And most of the courses in this immediate area are all 100% enforcement now as well.
Oh, in our case, we were a little bit different in that we know who's out there, and we have the threat of saying, you do it and you're gone. And this is their only game in town. They've got nothing else to do. That is precious to them. So what we've added is a beverage cart. Normally we do it on nice days, on Wednesdays and Fridays. Being a private club, we don't do it very much, but we've had it out there every single day, so they've had no excuse not to. So we've had a beverage cart rolling out the golf course, and what we've done is we've put the drinks on the cart, and you know, and then walked away 10 feet and told them to then come and get it. So that's been our approach. Might not be legal, but that's our approach, and it seemed to work well, and we haven't had that issue since the threat of suspension, and also having the service available, so they don't have an excuse of why they should bring it. Again, we've got a road that divides our golf course. The last thing we wanted to see was cans of beer being cracked open while they're crossing a road.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's switch over to Greg. You got a question for us, Greg?
Hi, gentlemen. This question is for Slade and Doug, for one of our Ottawa members here. Scott had mentioned about the tee-off times and want to get the public course position from Slade and Doug. Did you have what is your tee-off time now, I guess, but also did you have a set time and then you changed it as you kind of saw how everything kind of worked out?
Never really understood tee time restrictions. Alberta was smart, and they just said, manage the amount of people on your property so you can maintain 2 meters physical distancing. So I felt, you know, that was smart. And every golf course has a different situation. As we all know, we have plenty of space around our clubhouses for people to stay 2 meters apart. If they run into another group on the golf course, they're certainly not going to sidle up to him and stand shoulder to shoulder. You got plenty of room to stay 2 meters back. That's probably one of the biggest complaints we get is, you know, you get a bit of slow play and people say, oh, you're not following COVID procedures. And it's like, slow play is not a health protocol. Are you able to stay 2 meters back of the person in front of you? Yes, you are. So, so we didn't have any restrictions. We were lucky that way. I know other provinces are fighting some big battles, but we kept our same, our opening 3 days, we blocked a starter time every hour and a quarter. We're 9-minute tee times at most of our golf courses, so we kept that 9-minute and blocked every hour and a quarter. By the third day, we just opened it up and we didn't have any problems. You have your slow days. You're going to have slow days, as we all know, with 70 people or 270 people. We're going to have backups on certain holes. So again, I just go back to him and say, were you able to stay 2 meters back? Even though you're waiting on the tee? Yes, you can. So we'll deal with the slow play, but that's not a health issue. So.
Okay. Hey, I got another question here. Is what if two people show up in the same vehicle to your golf course? Can they ride together in the same cart? Gentlemen? Slade?
We're doing singles, but that's because that road divides us the golf course. So even if it's a couple, right now we're doing that. You have to ride your own cart, but as carts become more scarce, I'm sure that we'll pair them up and use that household thing. We were just being overcautious, being so public in the public eye.
Ours was very specific that you had to be single rider unless you're from the same household. So we're taking that as strict as we can. Again, we were really under the microscope our first weekend, and we were being just strict to the letter. What you do prior to you getting to this golf course is your business, but once you get here, we're going to follow our protocols, even though, you know, you might be pre-contaminated by riding with your buddy. When you get to the golf course, you're going to split up and do in 2 different carts. And
what about you, Doug?
A little different here because we actually wrote the policy in BC and gave it to the government. So we were pretty clear that as long as there wasn't more than 4 people on any given tee or green, we shouldn't be involved with tee time intervals. But that being said, we did start out at 12 minutes, and our problem was actually twosomes. There was the big demand for twosomes early on in the process. And once we deleted the twosomes, we've gone to 10 minutes, and most of the courses in our area are 10 minutes. It seems to be working well for our particular layout.
And what about for the cart situation where you're getting 2 guys coming in a vehicle and then they can't be in a cart together?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear, and that's why we have to say why you're on this property. Regardless of what health orders are out there, they're different at a house than they are at a commercial property. So we just say, why are you here? This is what we require. We are doing single rider only, and we made a device that sits in the passenger seat out of PVC pipe that prohibits another rider from being in there.
All right. While we're on that, has anybody experimented or looked at the plexiglass dividers? I know that's a question that I'm getting constantly is, hey, we've developed this and you get from the saran wrap and wood right through to a high-end plexiglass. If you've tried it, how did you go about getting it so that you could use it, or is it even possible? Slade, Doug, Scott?
I'll talk on that. We looked at it. We don't think it's feasible. It'll scratch. It doesn't have a life to it. And really, the ridership is down to 25%. So people aren't into the riding like they were to. So it's not coming back to the way we were. This is the new golf. The new golf is we're in charge. We're controlling the tee times. And the golfers are saying, well, we're going to walk. We're going to go in old school. We like the course. So even though we're a pretty hilly course, we're seeing a high percentage of walking. But our concern is the life of whatever we put in place. So we actually have 80 golf carts here. We assumed we need all 80. The most we've ever rented is 47 in a given day.
Wow.
So it is down.
What about you, Slade?
We're the opposite. We have carts going crazy. We run out every day. We're waiting for them to come up 18 and yanking it from them and running them out to the second hole, and golf pros jogging back in. And we were lucky. We bought an extra fleet in the fall, and it was stored all winter, and we were trading in our old ones, and we hadn't traded them in yet. So we were very lucky we had extra fleet that we distributed among the golf courses to give us a little bit of wiggle room. But yeah, carts are a big issue. We looked into the plexiglass. I submitted it to our health inspector to just get his policy on it. We had the policies for the restaurants come out yesterday, and they were very, there's a lot of inclusion of barriers. If you're unable to maintain 2 meters and provide a barrier between booths, barrier between tables. So we're writing kind of a revision for our protocols to submit to the government to say, okay, 15 minutes before your tee time doesn't make sense anymore because our restaurant's open and our pro shop's open. So all you have to say is I'm going to buy a sleeve of balls, and we get to let you in early. So we included that wording with the power carts to say single rider cart unless a barrier is installed. So we're hoping they will come back with some positivity on that. And then the golf courses can make a decision if it's, financially feasible. What I've looked into, we had a prototype built out from a local company, $150 to $180 to have like a custom fit, good looking plexiglass with, you know, finished edges so it doesn't cut you and stuff like that. But I've seen everything from $300 down to $30 to saran wrap. So, but as of right now, it's not, you're not allowed to use barriers.
Right on. Thanks, guys. Greg, Blair, we have another question.
Yep, I got one here. I'm getting this a lot, and a couple of you touched on it. And Scott, this is actually in your video. If everybody watched the video, driving ranges. Scott, maybe you can speak first, because I think that's part of your setup and part of your rotation to get teed off. But I want to hear from the public courses too, if it's opening it from revenue generator or just kind of spreading everybody out and how you're doing it.
Yeah, we're trying our best to give a real golf experience, and driving ranges, we've got the smallest one of them all. It's only 9 stalls wide. It's a warm-up area at best. You know, in 1893 they didn't have ranges. So, but we said, you know, if we've only got a foursome, how can 4 people not stay 6 feet apart? I mean, it just didn't make any sense. And now, granted, if your range is 500 yards from your building, then it's going to be more difficult, but for us it made sense with the flow that we had, and why wouldn't you want to give them the better experience if you can, and if you can generate revenue, great. In our case it doesn't matter, but we wanted to give a real golf experience if we could. So
What about you, Slade?
Yeah, we kept them closed for the first weekend. We allowed putting greens. There's a lot of confusion on if the ranges were included in our protocols or what we're allowed to do. They're very specific on golf courses. Some golf courses did open up their ranges. And again, you get into municipalities. City of Calgary inspectors drove around and closed driving ranges, said no. They said golf courses, this is your warning, you better close down. So, and then in other areas they're saying, oh yeah, go ahead. A couple days in, our chief medical officer said, you know, she got a question, what can you do this weekend? And she said, well, you can go golfing or driving ranges. So yeah, we went from non-essential service to being the only thing you're allowed to do as per the chief medical officer. So then everybody opened their range. We're still only allowed 15 minutes in before your tee time if you follow it strictly, which we are. So we just put warm-up balls every second stall. It's included in your green fee. And we upped the price by I don't know if we say pricing. We upped our price slightly. We upped our price slightly and included warm-up balls, but you still only allowed in 15 minutes before. So you are prepaid. So the guys who have played a couple times who just go parking lot straight to range, hit their bucket, and then they can go to the tee. So that's how we're managing it.
And Doug?
The first 30 days, we'll say from middle of March to April, we didn't run the driving range. We were so concentrated with golf and demand. We've opened it now, and we've put an attendant down there. So we used to have 2 terminals, 2 employees in the golf shop, with now charging the golfer for the foursome on file. They don't even come into the golf shop. So we've moved one of our POS terminals down to the range and the employee down there. So now when you're down there, you don't have to come in the building. You go right to the driving range. He'll handle your transactions and he'll dispense the balls for you. So really, it's no extra cost if you're moving to full online tee times and mobile check-ins.
Great, thanks, guys. Blair, got another one?
Yeah. How are you handling future tee time bookings from golfers who are currently on your property? Are they just coming into the pro shop to make that tee time with the foursome that they probably just played with?
I'm doing all bookings online. So the only way to book a tee time is online, because I want your credit card information, I want your data, and I want it secured.
Okay.
Slade?
People are booking on our app, like Doug was saying, mobile. Hasn't really been an issue. Today would be the first day we're allowed in our pro shop. The guys, they're asking the guys outside, they had their iPads, they could book them a tee time outside. So, yeah, you know, some of these questions, you're getting into the weeds that you have no clue what the protocol is going to be. Call it this afternoon and it could change everything. But yeah, for us, we weren't allowed in the retail, so we're outside, but we're using our iPads to book tee times and get their credit card info and all that stuff, and prepay. Everything was prepay. We wouldn't allow even members booking a foursome with 2 guests. The member had to pay for their guests. We went that strict, and we still are that strict.
Scott had mentioned about handling trouble members and how the president dealt with it. Just wondering for Slade and Doug, with being public golf courses, how are you guys handling, obviously you're not the police. There's bylaw officers, there's health authorities and inspectors, but how are you specifically dealing with it when you're seeing golfers not paying attention to the rules, or, you know, obviously not doing what they're supposed to be doing? Is it one strike you're out? Is it, hey, come on guys, get through the round and then we don't let you back? Or how tough are you playing, Doug?
We came out of the gate pretty strict. We removed people right off in the very beginning for high-fiving, but the golfers are pretty accommodating. They're not how they used to be. They realize this is a privilege. They want to be here. The only thing we've done is we've moved from using younger staff as starters to older staff. Has made a big difference for us. And every staff member is on a script. It's very key. We say the exact same wording from anyone you talk to, which matches the wording on our website and our messages. So the golfers are more accommodating than they have been in the past.
Right on. Slade?
Yeah, 100% agree. We had 0 belligerent golfers, if you can imagine. Shocking. But 0 problem, 0. Like, I shouldn't say, like, there's times where golfers are standing too close, but if you come over and say, hey guys, you're too close, they'll spread out and they won't give you any trouble, and they won't. I've never had to warn anyone twice. You know, and I don't know how many rounds we've done so far, a couple thousand maybe, at least. So yeah, 0 problems. It's the more problems we have is golfers saying, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, your website says this, and you said 15 minutes and I saw that guy get in 17 minutes for his tee time. So that's more of the stuff that we're trying to handle. So
All right, perfect. All right, we got time for one more question. Blair, Greg, got one more to throw out?
Yeah, I got one here, guys. Good segue, Doug. Staffing. Has anybody refused to come in? Are everybody looking for as many hours as they can get? And have you had any issues with staffing as you get in there? So I'll get all 3 to touch on that.
Nightmare. So we were up in operation. So the very first day we laid off 37 staff members roughly, and then we divided everyone up to teams. At that time, there was no government announcements for subsidies or the CERB. Now it's a bit of a challenge calling staff back. Some of the older staff don't want to come back. They feel it's risky, but they want staff privileges. They want to go golfing. So we've had to deal with that. It's gone not too bad. Now it looks like we'll be able to pull people off. And if they refuse to come back to work, we'll be able to go in and adjust their ROE and they won't qualify anymore. So we're not really anticipating any problems moving forward. But in that initial stage, everyone was pretty scared. But now it's kind of smoothed out here. And I know a couple courses have had a lot more problems than I've had with staffing.
Slade, what about you?
Yeah. We had a handful of people say, hum and haw, and I'm collecting my CERB, and I'll just stay home. So we just said, you know, if you don't answer your call now, there won't be one later. So most people came back, no problem. We did have a core staff that came in that night and started washing carts. So we've had some incredible staff members just come in and want hours and be happy to help and be part of the team. So I think, you know, everybody, it's, you know, what you've sowed for culture in years will help you at this point as far as staff wanting to help you out and come back. So we haven't had any issues that way. We've been able to layer on people. We've had 1 million resumes. So hiring anyone who doesn't want to come back to hire someone new is not going to be a problem. So yeah, we haven't had any issues. On staff, I would like to make a point, because we had a bit of a problem. A couple people have symptoms and need to stay home, which you got to just say, stay home, do not come to work. And one of the protocols in Alberta is you have to ensure your staff members come to work healthy. So we had a bit of a scare because one of our staff had symptoms, and she was working the beverage cart. She had seen 1,000 people over the weekend. And then you're just like, oh my God. So your heart sinks. You're like, this is a stress. I need my life right now. But just be really careful with your policies, procedures, making sure you're signing your bathroom checklists, cleaning checklists. And what we did is on our app, we added a staff health check. And all it was is a click through to a form. And they just say, have you been in contact with anyone with COVID symptoms? Do you have runny nose, headache, blah, blah, blah? And have you traveled the last 14 days? Submit. So we get all our staff members do that every time they enter the property. And in this case, the first time he said, oh my God, I hope she did her staff health check, and she had done it for every single shift. So it just covers your butt. And, you know, she ended up being negative, which is great. But if we did have a positive, at least if there was an investigation, we can say, okay, here's our checklist. Here's our staff health check. She said she was feeling fine yesterday and the day before and the day before. And the second she said she had symptoms, she stayed home. And we sent a message and blah, blah, blah. So just make sure you have that so you don't get any surprises.
That's great, Slade. Thank you. Scott, what about you?
Yeah, we had, obviously we're kind of going through it. You guys are getting near the finish line, but we had set rules on, you know, that if you're going to come and work for us, that you're saying that you've stayed within your household, you haven't left your bubble, with the exception of going to grocery stores. You haven't let your even extended family come into your house, and you haven't gone to a friend's house. And if you have, or somebody in your household has been kind of just skirting around the rules, then you can't work. And we'll have somebody else that works. And we were very good with that. And especially because we had our grab and go, and we kept some of our food and beverage staff going. That was a requirement. And I've had to turn away people to do that. But going back to the CERB question, absolutely, we've had that issue. There's been, especially on the grounds crew and in the food and beverage, you know, $2,000 to do nothing versus getting, you know, $13 to $15 an hour and lucky to make $2,400, you know, during the same stretch. It just didn't make sense for those people to risk it if they were older or whatever it is. The pro shop's a little bit different. Most of our, I think we have 8 or 9 pros. They're dedicated. They want to get back. They want to make sure they're part of the team, but definitely had issues with food and beverage and grounds team not wanting to come back. They're a different mentality typically. And so we're just slowly getting back to close to numbers when it comes to our ground staff. And food and beverage, sadly, you know, now that we're not going to do weddings or anything else, we're probably only going to need half the team that we originally had all set up, and because we were open, you know, and as Doug said, you know, we're ready to ramp up for a big season. We're open year round and busy at some point. So we had all the staff, and we had to put 60 on EI when it first went out. So my guess in food and beverage is our team will be half the size it was planned to be.
Right on. Well done, gentlemen. Big thank you to all 3 of you for joining us today. It's 12 o'clock here our time, and I know all of you have got to get going into your day today. So we appreciate you taking an hour out at the start to come and help your colleagues here in Ontario. We really do appreciate it. We're hopeful in an hour our premier is going to give us some direction. There seems to be a lot of media chatter here in the last 24 hours that we're going to get some good news, and we really appreciate the 3 of you jumping on here this morning to give us some firsthand knowledge and experience of what you guys went through and help us as we get ready here for the next hopefully a couple days before we get open. So thanks, gentlemen. I know that there's a lot of questions that were thrown to Greg and Blair, and we tried to get through as many as we can, but obviously there's only so many we can do. We're going to keep those questions. We'll flip them over to the gentlemen and see if there's an opportunity to get some responses. But you know, be realistic that they've got their own operations that they're running as well. So we'll try to get some answers back to those who submitted them, but we'll leave it at that. So once again, thank you very much, Doug, Slade, Scott. A big thank you to our colleague that you guys don't see, Mark Fraser, who's the technological wizard behind the scenes that makes these webinars come together. Without Mark's help, these would be a disaster. So thanks, Mark. We appreciate it. And on behalf of my colleagues, Greg and Blair, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. As I said, we're actually awaiting the big announcement from Premier Ford. It sounds like there's going to be some good news coming out this afternoon. So let's all watch the 1 o'clock conference, see what happens. If we get the message we're looking for, there's going to be documentation coming out from the NGCOA right away with everything that we've got. And we'll go forward from there. So if you have any questions, if you've got any concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to the 3 of us. And I want to thank you all for joining us. Take care, everyone. As you see up on the screen right now, there's the Resource Center. Everything that you need to know from COVID-19 is on our website at www.ngcoa.ca/resources. We've done a great job with pulling all that information there for you. Please use it. There's free signage. There's the webinars that we've done with KPMG, with employment in Ontario. There's all the videos we talked about from the guys from today. There's all the bulletins. There's everything you need on there. So make sure you utilize that. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Once again, thank you, Club Car, Integra, Moneris, Moosehead, Tion, and Toro. We really appreciate your support of this, and wishing all of you in Ontario a very healthy and safe opening in the near future. And thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.